Welcome to Pistons Jack Weekly, where I'll be recapping all the latest news and results for your Detroit Pistons using the 3-1-3 formula. We'll cover 3 likes, 1 dislike, and 3 things to keep an eye on for the next week of your Detroit Pistons. Normally, I open these doing a vibe check on the week that has just gone, but the biggest news of the day dropped earlier this morning. For me, it was like midnight of the night before, but I was pleasantly surprised to wake up to the news of Ausar Thompson being cleared by the NBA's, the Players Association. There was a group within there that cleared him to play, cleared him of any risk of the blood clots he was assessed with back in March 8 months ago. And I think that is by far the biggest like, probably of the season. It's definitely the biggest like of this episode. It was reported by Shams Charania of ESPN that Thompson, the 5th overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft, had been sidelined since March by a blood clot issue and will now begin ramping up, participating in full contact practices for the first time in 8 months and preparing to make his season debut in the near future. So first of all, just so happy for Ausar, obviously, first and foremost, because I think anyone who makes it to the NBA or professional basketball, like there's a dedication to their craft, and more often than not, they absolutely love the game. They love the sport of basketball and it's their life. But I truly think the Thompson twins, above many of the players in the NBA, truly just live and breathe basketball. So for Ausar in particular to just be cleared to play the game he loves once again at the highest level, I think I'm just so happy for him, his family, because like blood clots, as we've spoken about on here and people have mentioned, like it's not just like a broken leg or, you know, I think I spoke about Taylor Hendricks' gruesome leg injury a couple of weeks ago and how as horrible as that is, like that is something you can recover from and many players have before. And whilst you miss a year, there's a timeline of recovery, whereas blood clots are just like, you don't know. Like I only tweeted out probably a week ago that like Christian Coloco finally made his season debut for the Lakers after being sidelined for 18 months after he had a similar blood clot issue and needed to be cleared. So for Ausar to be cleared 8 months later is awesome news. It's awesome for the Pistons this season and the future. It's just all around good news. And I'll talk about kind of Ausar's return to the rotation and the team and how that'll impact it a bit later in the episode. But I think in terms of when we can expect Ausar to be back actually on the court, I think it could be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. It's just my guess. Could be a little bit earlier, maybe even a bit longer, but I think somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks. So I just don't want Pistons fans thinking he's going to be back today to play the Heat and then the Bucks in a back-to-back. Like I think he needs a week or two to do actual 5-on-5 basketball, because that's what he hasn't been able to do to get his conditioning back to a 5-on-5 level. Like obviously he's been working out and he's in great shape, but there's just a different level when you're playing 5-on-5 full contact basketball. So I would expect, probably around 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks until he's back. And then once he's back, I think it's going to be off the bench to start, I think. And I think his minutes, he might have a minutes restriction. I'm not sure there, but I just don't want people to get their hopes up too much that he's going to be back playing 35 minutes a night in the next couple of days. But, you know, long term, he definitely will be. In a month's time, he probably will be. That's very likely. So that has to be the first like of the week. It's awesome news. And I just can't wait to see him on the court, because I'll talk on it more, like I said, about the impact he can have on this team. But yeah, just amazing news for everyone involved with the Pistons and Ausar's family. But moving on, the second like from the past week, where the Pistons went 2-2 and continued to just take strides forward, was Cade Cunningham's defensive buy-in. I thought, like, I tweeted out some stats that from the matchups Cade had so far, and he has, without Ausar in the team, he's been stepping up and playing a lot of minutes on the best wings in the world. He's played on LeBron. He took Jaylen Brown. He took Jason Tatum. I think, who else did he play? I tweeted out some stats, but he had like some crazy numbers that like none of those. I think Tatum hit like 2 of 6 shots on him. Brown went 0 of 6. LeBron was 0 of 6. And he's just been taking some of the Pistons, or some of the NBA's best wings and doing a really good job. And I know 6 shots might not sound like a huge sample size, but that's just the shots LeBron or that player takes. Like, they don't shoot every time down the floor. So, Cade's guarding them as they're trying to facilitate. And I think in both the Pistons wins last week, one against the Lakers. Not the Lakers. The Lakers. My mistake. He took LeBron and he took him out. Like, I thought LeBron, he did an excellent job on LeBron. And then I just thought, overall his effort on that end, particularly on ball, has just been at a different level. And then I thought against Atlanta, he had the clutch block at the end to seal the game, win the Pistons. I thought that Atlanta game, while the Pistons were in the driver's seat for most of it, I think that game-winning shot and then the game-winning block he had on back-to-back possessions was huge. Because if the Pistons lose that game, I just feel like the vibes are nowhere near where they are right now. The belief isn't at the level it's at. And even yesterday against the Rockets, like, the Pistons lost that, but he had this ridiculous block on Şengün, which I posted on my Instagram and on Twitter. But go check that out, because that was one of the craziest blocks I've ever seen. I had a lot of Rockets fans telling me it's a foul, but Cade gets the hand and the ball, and he might get the hand a little bit first, but to my knowledge, hand and the ball are the same thing. Like, he didn't swipe across kind of the wrist and then hand and ball. It was just straight onto the hand and ball. So that was a ridiculous block, which ultimately will be forgotten because the Pistons lost that game. Another heartbreaker, but I just think like the buy-in from him on that end has been huge, because it kind of ties into my next and third and final like from the past week. But like, this team doesn't have amazing defensive talent. They don't have amazing defenders at each kind of key position. They're more, Isaiah Stewart's a great defender. Fontecchio, when healthy, is okay, but he's struggled this year. Cade's kind of the only other guy that, he's 6'6", 7 foot wingspan, has the measurables, the lateral speed to kind of be a good defender. He's just had to take on so much load offensively. It's been hard for him to commit to that end, but I feel like, he's still going to have his times where he gets lost when he's off ball, because he's, he loses his man in the corner or that kind of thing, and that's obviously somewhere for a team to improve. But I think just there's been plenty, there's stats that I tweeted out about him individually holding his matchup to low efficiency, but I just think on the whole, like, he's, compared to last season, and maybe even the season before, even only played like 12 games, like, it's night and day. And this team, since they don't really have a defensive, like without Ausar in particular, they don't really have that true defensive playmaker, or, they don't have a starting big man who can be your defensive anchor. Like, Cade's kind of taking on that role of setting a tone there, and I think he's doing a great job. So his life should get easier with Ausar's return in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, just have to shout out it's the buy-in. There's still mistakes from Cade, but it's just the overall buy-in and just the effort he's giving on that end, while still being a triple-double guy on the other end. Like, I didn't even mention that. He had 3 triple-doubles last week, but I just think his defense on the whole has been much improved and pretty good. So this kind of brings me to my third like, where I just want to talk about the Pistons defense overall. And I just spoke about kind of the lack of personnel they have on paper as guys known to be, solid to good defenders. But I think JB Bickerstaff's doing an excellent job at, just getting these guys to buy in and just, like the Pistons aren't playing at the fastest pace. So, some of these numbers are a bit watered down or somewhat misleading, but the Pistons right now rank 14th in the NBA for defensive rating, which is, for this team, is pretty crazy. Like, we all thought on the defensive end, this team might struggle this year. And look, it's 11 games, but to be sitting at 14th 3 weeks into the season, I think is a credit to JB Bickerstaff, because that man just knows how to coach defense. Like, everyone's bought in. Like, I think Ivy, I just spoke about Cade, but their backcourt, I think their effort has been great. Like, I think that's the main thing. Like, defense is, like, I would say, like, at least half of it's about effort. And then you can split the other half between, like, an understanding, physical gifts. But I think 50% of defense is effort, maybe more. And I think that's what's really helping this team, because like I mentioned, Ivy and Cade, I think Ivy's effort on the defensive end has been a lot better. He still gets lost, but his effort is there every night. Like, he's had really encouraging possessions on, like, Tyrese Maxey going back a week and a half ago. And I just thought, like, even on Trae Young at times, I think he was solid, even though Trae got off a little bit there. But guys like Tobias Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., max effort all the time. Like, Tobias yesterday against Houston had, like, 3 blocks, 2 steals, rebounding the ball. Like, Tobias isn't a great one-on-one defender because he just is a bit slow to move side to side. But I think, like, the effort is there. Like, Beasley constantly, like, he's talking trash to Trae Young. Like, he's giving effort. They're trying. Tim Hardaway Jr., like, those guys are setting a tone and leading, and the other guys are following. And I think it's just been all effort, because honestly, the only player I would say outside of Cade that has just been has been truly impressive defensively is Isaiah Stewart. Like, Isaiah Stewart has been, like, there's rim protection numbers at having, like, the 4th best rim protector in the league at the moment. He's, like, box score numbers won't jump out, but I've spoken about it a lot. Like, I think against the Lakers and in Philadelphia, those 2 games, like, Isaiah Stewart was a top 3 reason why they won. And his defense in the other games, when he hasn't been in foul trouble, has been elite. And whilst I'll talk about something in the Disklike that's been hurting this team without Jaylen Duren, like, I think for the most part, Stu has been fine as a starting big. Without Duren, the Pistons have still been in games. I think they're 1 and 2 without him, but I think Stu's doing a fine job. But I think defensively he's been excellent, and he's kind of been the best defender along with Cade, but everyone else is giving effort. So huge shout out to JB Bickerstaff there, because the talent or the defensive kind of pedigree isn't there on this roster to be kind of 14th. So if they can keep this up and the offense starts to pick up a little bit more, it's really encouraging. So I can't wait to see Ausar in this system. Moving on now to my one dislike of the past week, and it has to be offensive rebounding. And this isn't like all on the players for not trying. This isn't on JB Bickerstaff for implementing a bad system. But Detroit's 2 losses this week, just gone, arguably were both due to offensive rebounding. And the first one was the Hornets game, where they lose at the buzzer on a Brandon Miller putback because the Pistons forget to box out. And also JB decided not to have Stu or Paul Reed in the game. I put that one's just like a fluky loss. I know it's happened to the Pistons 2 or 3 times in the past couple of seasons, but it's still, they lost an offensive rebound. And then against Houston, the Rockets just across the entire game dominated on the offensive glass, and that's what they do. They crash the offensive glass because they can't really shoot. But I think they out-rebounded the Pistons 18-8 on the offensive glass. Just had numerous back-breaking second chance points, opportunities off Pistons players not being able to get the rebound. And, this is where Jaylen Duren has been sorely missed because, I think Isaiah Stewart and Paul Reed have done a fine job defensively, but they just can't rebound anything like Duren. The Pistons' size without Duren and Ausar to a lesser extent is just, they are such a small team. They are not short in the sense of they start 6'1" players, but they're just all 6'5" to 6'8", 9", and they just don't have that 7-footer without Duren, or Duren's 6'10", 6'11", but I'm excited for Duren to come back, clearly, because of the rebounding, but also some of the other stuff he gives. And I think Ausar will definitely help with this as well, because there's one thing we saw from his rookie season, outside of his defense and athleticism, it's just his ability to, any given night, get you 15 rebounds. He can do that on the offensive glass, but also defensively. And I think he will help a heap. Just because Duren and Ausar do it off their athletic gifts. They're not necessarily guys that box out a heap, but I think you could probably argue they're the Pistons' two best rebounders. Ausar's right there with Stu in second. So that's a dislike, but I think I was thinking in the past I've spoken about dislikes, big man defense or the issues with the big man rotation, whereas offensive rebounds I think is something that can be fixed with, when some couple of players return, and it's probably something we aren't talking about if the Pistons can get healthy. So finally, to close it out, a few things to keep an eye on for the upcoming week, and the first thing is Jaden Ivey's play. I think Jaden's been excellent for the most part this regular season. He was awesome in the preseason. I think he's taken plenty of steps forward so far and is on the verge of taking a leap. But I think in the last week, he kind of regressed a little bit. And he averaged 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Which is those counting stats are fine. It's these numbers that are the ones that concern me. It's the 4 turnovers per game, 48% shooting from the field. That's okay, but 33% from three that's a dip from where he's been. He's been above 40% prior to that. So, it's fine to have a few down games. I spoke about it on yesterday's stream after the Rockers game. I think that's the worst game I've ever seen Jaden play. In a game that mattered, and I think he'll bounce back. But it's just something to keep an eye on, because he has been a player, and people who are critical of Jaden Ivey will say he's capable of these 2-week hot streaks and then he goes cold. So, he started off, his first 2 weeks were really, really positive and great, then a bit of a down week. So I think he'll bounce back this week, and but he needs to, because you see how much this team struggles to generate offense, like they did in that Rockets game when he can't get going. It's just too much to put on Cade. And, the Rockets didn't even play that well offensively, but they just were able to put up enough points because the Pistons, it was kind of just Ivy. It was kind of just Cade for the most part, and then the vets came to a little bit in the fourth. But they really need Ivy to be efficient. And if he gives you an efficient 18, 4 and 4 with only 2 turnovers, that's brilliant. But it's just the efficiency is key for him. So something to keep an eye on for sure. I think he'll bounce back. The second thing to keep an eye on for this week and definitely the week after is how will Ausar and Duren's return affect the rotation? Now, Jaylen Duren's return I don't think affects too much at all. I think he would take Paul Reed's minutes, or he'll take Stu's starting minutes, and then Stu will take Paul Reed's backup minutes that we've seen the past few games. But I think Ausar's return is where we'll really start to see how JB envisions this team for this season and a little bit long term, because JB's been very strict on pretty much only playing a 9-man rotation unless there's been foul trouble this season so far. And I think with Ausar returning, if JB's to keep a 9 10-man rotation, I think Ron Holland and Fontecchio will be the two guys to lose potentially their spot in the rotation on a night-to-night basis, depending on who the Pistons play. But I think those two will lose their spot in the rotation, or one of them. And then I think, though, if JB's just going to bring Ausar back into the fold and run a 10-man rotation, I think Tech and Ron definitely lose minutes, and then Tim Hardaway Jr. as well. Because all those three players all play at the 3, and that's pretty much where Ausar is going to play for the most part. But it's going to be interesting. I think it's probably more of a conversation for once Ausar's actually back and played a decent sample size of games and could potentially start. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think the starting group right now, even when Duren's in there, it's been pretty good. I think Cade, Ivy, THJ, Tobias, and Duren has been pretty solid. I know the numbers might not show it, but I think the only player there that you would probably take out for Ausar is Tim Hardaway Jr., but I think he's been excellent this season. He probably had one of his down games against Houston yesterday, but in the first 3 quarters, but in the last quarter he made a 3 and an and 1 that was huge. So I just think the starting 5 stays the same for now, particularly if they just stay on this pace of winning 2 of every 4 or 5 games. I don't think it changes, but they could definitely use Ausar's defense in the starting lineup for sure. But obviously you lose your best shooter if you put him in for Tim Hardaway Jr. So, but at least in the short term, that's kind of how I see the rotation playing out. Finally, looking purely ahead to this week and the 4 games Detroit have, they've just had the teams they play this week are easier, but it's just brutal. They're already going to play their 3rd set of a back-to-back. But the opponents aren't as tough as they were in that first week. But Pistons are 4-7. They're currently, I think, 10th in the East. And if they were to win 2 this week, or maybe 3, they could go all the way up to the 3rd or 4th seed. So it's exciting to see where they're at. But tomorrow or today, by the time you're watching this, they play Miami at home, which I think is a must-win. Jimmy Butler won't be playing. He's been ruled out. I think they have to win this because it's the first night of a back-to-back before they go on a 3-game road trip. So I think you have to beat Miami tomorrow. They then travel to Milwaukee immediately, where Damian Lillard could be out with concussion protocols, but it'll be a game time decision, it sounds like. But they play in Milwaukee, which I don't care how bad the Bucks have been. That's going to be a tough game for Detroit, and I think the Bucks will see this game against Detroit as similar to the way the Knicks saw it a week ago, where it's we might not be, in form if you're the Bucks, but as soon as you see a team like the Pistons, who have been down the bottom for the past few seasons, you can really use that as a game to get right and get your season on track and just get everyone's confidence up. So the Pistons don't really have anyone to take Giannis apart from Stu. So I don't think Ausar will be there for that game. So that game will be tough no matter what the Bucks' schedule is or record is I think that's a game I think they'll probably lose. Honestly, if they win, I'll be over the moon. But I think that's one as well. Back to back, you're traveling to Milwaukee. I just think that's a tough one. They then play Toronto in Toronto 2 days later, and then 2 days later they play the Wizards to round out the week in Washington. So we could be sitting here this time next week and they're 3-1. I think they'll go 2-2. I think they get Miami tomorrow and they get one of Toronto or Washington. But I can see why, based on how they played. A lot of people will think it's 3-1 week. But I think I'm just going with 2-2. I still think a young team on the road, they're susceptible to a bit of a letdown loss to a Washington or Toronto. I just think, I think they're a season away from being that team that beats teams anywhere, anytime on the road. Doesn't matter, the talent difference. But hopefully they win. So we'll see. My prediction is they get 2-2. We're back here and they're 6-9 on the season, still well in the playing race. And yeah, but that's going to do it for today's show, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Big news is that Ausar Thompson is back and will be definitely playing this season, which is just amazing. I'm so excited for that. But that's going to do it for today. Let me know your thoughts and everything below about what we've spoken about, anything that's been on your mind, your likes, dislikes, anything that you want me to keep an eye on. Please let me know in the comments below. And if you could like, subscribe, I'd appreciate any support. But if not, thank you so much for watching. And as always, go Pistons.